What happens at Grandma's stays at Grandma's is a model for you and your grandkids. If it's fun, it's fair game. But lately, hip pain has you grimacing more than laughing. And that's a moment you realize life's too short to put off treatment any longer.
The Joint and Spine Center is Cincinnati's leading destination for orthopedic care, with hundreds of joint replacements each year. So when a moment has the power to change the rest of your life, go to the one place with the power to change it for the better. The Christ Hospital Health Network. This changes everything.
The Pound This Podcast is brought to you by the Christ Hospital Health Network. This is the Pound This Podcast, episode 722, The Importance of Exercise for Both Your Mind and Body, with Adam Ortman.
I want to lose weight, but I don't know how to get started.
What should I meal prep every week?
How do I get those sweet booty gains?
Inspiration for your healthy lifestyle. The Pound This Podcast with Amanda Valentine.
Thank you so much for listening to the Pound This Podcast. I am Amanda Valentine. Two returning guests joining me today. One, Josh Garrett from Cincy 360 Fitness. Hi, Josh.
Hi, Amanda.
And Adam Ortman, who has not been on since episode 62, multiple years ago. It's about time you came back.
It's been a while. I didn't realize it was episode 62. It's great. Like 700 episodes later.
I know, right? Well, a lot has changed between 2018 and 2021, obviously. So last time you came on, we talked about you worked at Anytime Fitness in Dayton, Ohio.
Yep.
And now you tell me the process from, I guess, what's happened since 2018. Let's just go ahead and leave out COVID.
Yeah.
And let's just talk about the gym from where you were there to what you're working on now.
Yeah. So, episode 62, we're at Anytime Fitness, helping the main clientele of weight loss, moving better, feeling better. Our next chapter has begun. We've moved on from Anytime Fitness as of the end of August, which is very exciting. It's a new chapter in our journey. And we're with Activate Brain and Body, where we want to help individuals build a more resilient brain through physical exercise, stress management, and nutrition. So we're moving on to Activate, and we're going to be opening up in December in Montgomery, near about a couple blocks from the Montgomery Inn.
Okay, that's awesome. Now, we're going to have to unpack all of that.
Oh, we will absolutely unpack all of that.
Because, I mean, whenever we, you asked about, coming on the podcast again and stuff like that, I'm like, okay, this sounds so interesting of putting the brain element into physical activity, which there has to be some level of brain activity, obviously, when you're doing the motions, you're doing the exercise, you're not trying to hurt yourself, you're getting that mind-body connection, all of that. But so then what are you talking about as far as using your brain with exercise? Yeah,
so the easiest way I can put it, and we were briefly talking about this a little bit upstairs, exercise is the number one thing you can do for your brain health. Proven, research shows it. Individuals, and this was me back in the day, like Sudoku, crosswords, brain puzzle games. There's nothing wrong with that towards brain health. But all of us are aging, and none of us can ever defeat or go away from that. And as we age, our brain health does decline. So what we want to do is work on the preventive track to allow individuals to work on their brain health. So what we do is we combine fitness with technology to help wage the war on future cognitive decline. So for instance, running on a treadmill or walking on a treadmill. When you do that over and over, it becomes very easy in the sense that you're not thinking about it as far as a cognitively stimulating task, right? You turn the treadmill on, you turn on 3 miles an hour, and you're moving, you're walking, you're not really thinking about it. Most of us might be watching Netflix or an episode of TV when we're on that treadmill. Whereas if you go walk in a new trail, let's say here in Cincinnati that you've never walked on before, you have to navigate the roots, the stones. Is it muddy? You're using your brain while your heart rate is elevated. And research shows that's where the highest chance of improved brain health can happen when it comes to physical activity.
So Josh, you've been a trainer for a long time. Have you used any of these sorts of things to bring in the new sort of cognitive brain into your workouts?
No, I mean, as Adam was saying, just moving in and of itself gives you the release of, different synapses firing and your brain kind of rewiring itself, and you're learning new movement patterns. So that adds a complexity component to it. But adding the whole, what we just did upstairs, the visual system, and I don't know, what do you call that?
Yeah, so that right there that was a SmartFit pods. SmartFit's the company that makes the SmartFit board. But that would be in our workout, part of the cognitive circuit, that would just be the brain piece, right?
Yeah.
So they're going through the physical activity, which, like you said, is cognitively challenging, right? There's new movement patterns that they'd have to learn, sometimes more of a balance component, right? A single arm, a single leg. So there is a thinking component to the exercise. But then, like you said, when you add that display, the brain piece, and your heart rate's elevated, you're moving, you're learning new exercises, and now you have to solve a math problem or do a memory or go through the alphabet. It's a lot more challenging than most people think. And that's where the brain piece
just adds another layer to it that I've never experienced before. I mean, it was interesting.
Yeah. So what we did is we had, I'll tell you in my way of describing this, and then you can give me the correct way.
For sure.
So it's like you had these sort of pods. So if somebody has ever been to like an event where there's like a stand-up like thing with an iPad on it that you would like, sign up to win a prize pack or something. That's my experience with it. There's like 3 of these things and they have colors on them, but they have letters or numbers or smiley faces or shapes. And what we in particular did here right before we started recording this podcast is you set it up to have the alphabet in these 3 different pods. And then you would start by touching it. So you're kind of running in between the 3. And then it would give you a number like, hey, we're going to go 3 letters into the alphabet, and you have to think of like, okay, what's 3 letters away from A? And then all the different letters would pop up and you have to go tap it. And so, I mean, that's already just hard. Like that is not something I'm good at. That's not something I think about, is like the number associated or just counting the alphabet. And then to make it harder, the second way around is then you had us dribble a basketball. So then you're dribbling a basketball, you're running in between these 3 different things, and you're trying to count the numbers between the alphabet and trying to figure it all out. And yeah, when you were done, like your heart rate's up, like, cause you are just kind of like, running the little relays in between here while you're also trying to think and count letters in the alphabet and then look for them at the same time. It's really interesting. So I got to know, like, what's your first experience with something like that? Did you try this somewhere and you're like, oh, hell yeah, we're opening a gym and doing this?
Well, I wish it was that simple. No, it normally doesn't work that way. So a lot of research behind it. So Activate Brain and Body has been in the research phase for about 9 years now. There's a team of 8 of us working together, in particular a chief science officer. So she's a clinical psychologist at Thomas Jefferson University, and she does all the research and science behind it. So my job here is to connect the research piece and the science piece into an exercise component to make sure it makes sense and it flows well. So when it comes to SmartFit or any other companies out there, one, it needs to make sense and it needs to be highly data-driven. So something to make sure is, number one, whether you're new to exercise or you've been someone who's exercising, their whole life, it can be modified to you. So like you said, Amanda, you were running and moving in between and then using a basketball the second time around. If someone's never done anything like this before or is brand new to exercise or might be into a new environment, they wouldn't necessarily do the running or the dribbling. They might simply be walking, from pod to pod, because that might be where they're at on their journey. So the key there is data. So what took us so long to really finalize and make the decision to move forward is, one, is this helpful and impactful to individuals? Like, can we make a difference in the lives of the community? And all 8 of our founders and owners are all impacted some way personally with Alzheimer's, whether it be grandparents, parents going through it. So both of my grandparents had Alzheimer's, and I lived through that, and it was challenging at the time being younger and feeling kind of hopeless. So all of us have a personal connection on wanting and needing to make an impact within the community. So that's, number one, behind our passion. And then number 2, is our product and service data-driven? Is there science and research behind it? And so those SmartFit pods, what makes them unique, they actually track data. So I can show improvement into a member when he or she goes through it day 1 versus when she goes through it day 60, 90, 120, a year later, to show was there improvement or not. And the whole goal is, over time, we can actually monitor and show improvements on memory, processing speed. Is your life getting easier in those areas? So we want to be able to show it, not just, hey, this is a great workout, we work the brain, cool.
Yeah.
Like, that's not what we're about. So one of our core values is all science and research based.
And I think that's awesome, because it's like, yeah, you can track like body fat and things like that, or weight and inches and all of these other things, but it's like, you can actually track that your memory is getting stronger and that you're using your brain more. by showing up to the gym is pretty wild.
Yep.
Well, I think that's what's cool is like we've talked about it numerous times of, when people just exercise more, it's kind of like the Staples Easy Button commercial, right? Like all these other areas of your life just kind of miraculously fall into place. Now you guys are putting the research behind it of saying like, no, here's what you're doing to stimulate brain activity and to have that clarity of mind and, be able to remember where you put your keys and yada, yada, yada. But we just did an abridged version of what the typical workout would be.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So walk us through like what it would be, what a typical client would go through.
Yeah. So a typical workout, number one, all of our trainers are certified brain health trainers. So it's something unique that I don't even know if we necessarily touched on up there. So, I mean, when you and I talked 3 years ago, lots of certifications, I think 14 or 15 in the fitness and nutrition realm, right? Which is really cool. I like that. It's important to always learn. But out of those 14 or 15 that I've had and still have, none of them talked about brain health. Right. I mean, it's you know, you've been in the fitness industry, NASM and ACE and all of them. Not once, at least that I can recall, did they ever bring up brain health ties to fitness. And so one of our core principles that we're going to have all of our trainers go through is everyone's going to be a certified brain health trainer. And so what that missing link is, how does exercising in a certain way in particular work the brain and potentially improve brain health? So all of our sessions are going to be led by certified brain health trainers. They're 60 minutes long. They're in small groups, so anywhere from 4 to 6 individuals, and everything is going to be in their own spot. So they're going to have their own equipment, their own stations, everything is theirs. And so based on the screening and assessments that they go through prior to the workout session, they're going to have a certain client level, and that level's dependent on how they move. So based on the overhead squat that we take them through, we're going to be able to see which muscles are tight, which ones are loose. And the idea is, based on that, they're going to have certain exercises they shouldn't do. And that's going to be built into the programming. So once the workout starts, they're going to have about a 30 to 35-minute exercise circuit is the easiest way to explain it. So there'll be 5 to 8 exercises that they would go through, all functional. So when we talk about functional, we're talking about movements that individuals do every day. So the easiest way to explain that would be playing with their kids, their grandkids, going out golfing, gardening, the hobbies and things that they enjoy. We want to make sure the exercises they do help make those easier. Not the typical sitting on a selectorized piece of equipment and doing a seated bicep curl or a seated overhead press. That does help you get stronger, but it's not functional because nowhere in daily life are we ever generally seated and doing 100 pounds overhead. At least I haven't. So it's gonna be.
I do every day.
Every day. Well,
Sure.
Certain occupations though. I would love to see that, Amanda.
Okay.
I can't wait on this podcast. So functional training, 30, 35 minutes. Their heart rate's going to be elevated, and we're going to be able to see that through software that we have that is displayed on the TV. And periodically throughout the workout session, while their heart rate's elevated, they're going to get called to the SmartFit board or the SmartFit pods, which you guys went through upstairs. And so the idea is their heart rate's elevated, they're working out, their muscles are fatigued and tired, and now they have to do a novel brain component or a novel brain game. So one day it might be addition, another day it might be multiplication, it might be seek the smiley face, it might be only find the red colors, not the blue, might be alphabet, skip the letter. And there might be different modifications to each of those, right? It might be a non-dominant hand, it might be shuffle left to right, like walk back and forth, left to right. So there's all these different modifications that you're doing for about 60 seconds at a time at the SmartFit board or the pods or whatever piece of brain equipment that we have at the time to really get the brain engaged, which 10 plus 10 generally isn't the hardest thing. But when your heart rate's elevated, your muscles are tired, and you're 20 minutes into a workout, all relative to that individual. So this isn't some crazy CrossFit workout. It's a very functional exercise based on their movement. That's going to meet them where they're at, which is pretty cool. And then after about 30, 35 minutes, we do what's called a brain builder. So we get everyone together for about 4 to 5 minutes, and we'll go to the SmartFit board, our T-Wall board, which is just another interactive board that we'll have. And we do a team component at the end where we bring everybody together and we basically celebrate the session for about 45 minutes. And we work both physically and the brain piece one last time all together. And then we do a restorative cool down, which would be basically a way to cool the body down. We stretch out and end the session appropriately. So about 60 minutes for each session.
So the science shows, though, that it has to be something new. That you're to train your brain, to work your brain to get the benefits out of everything. That's why you have the alphabet and the colors and all of these things. It needs to be something novel and new. And like you brought up the example of you're doing a different trail, but it's like after you already did the trail once or a couple of times, you already have that muscle memory there. So that's not growing the brain in these ways. And like kind of always constantly being tossed around.
Correct. And that I think is one of the most powerful examples is walking on a treadmill. Most of us know how to do that and do it very easily, right? We go, I did that this morning. Wasn't the most stimulating thing. I only had a certain amount of time. Went on the treadmill, turned it on, 4, 5, 6 miles an hour, and I walked and ran, and I did that. I didn't do anything with my, brain necessarily that was new. Now, is it great for your health? For sure. Is it great for your brain? For sure. But if you could do something better, let's do that. And so walking or running on a trail, that's new. I don't know where the rocks are. I don't know where the next turn is. I don't know what kind of roots and trees are going to be there. That's when it's really exciting. And then same thing goes for Sudoku, crossword puzzles. Those are great to do. We should never not do them. But if you could do it better, meaning the brain health component, let's elevate the heart rate a little bit. Let's do a brain component with your heart rate elevated. And that's where that BDNF, like we were talking upstairs, Josh, gets released.
Yeah, so explain that to me then, so the scientific correlation between having your heart rate up with doing these brain stimulations and what kind of magic creates out of that.
Yeah, and Josh was upstairs earlier, and I said BDNF, and most people, when I say BDNF, there's just like a blank stare, and you seemed intrigued, and he knew a little bit about it. So BDNF is a brain-derived neurotropic factor. It's a protein in the brain that gets released particularly through physical cardio exercise, but even resistance training gets released through the muscle. In simple human terms to understand, it's like miracle grow for the brain. So there's a big myth out there that we have X number of brain cells, and once those brain cells are gone, they're gone. That's a myth. That's not true. You absolutely can build new brain cells and build a bigger neural network with more brain cells and connect them. The challenge is that novel piece. So when we talk about BDNF, when you get your heart rate up to about 65, 75%, now it can be a little bit higher and a little bit lower, but that's the optimal range. When you get your heart rate up there, that's when BDNF is really getting released. And it's like that miracle grow. So it's sending signals, hey, new brain cells. I want to grow. I want to build new neuroplasticity is the fancy term, build new networks and make it new, more flexible. The challenge is if we don't do something novel or new at that time when the heart rate's up and that BDNF is getting released, you're less likely to allow those new neural networks to stick around. So for instance, walking on a treadmill, BDNF is getting released, but because there's nothing challenging about that brain-wise, they're less likely to connect and stick around to form these new networks. Whereas when you're doing what we did upstairs, or let's say a trail, that BDNF is getting released, and now you're telling it to go somewhere and to start to link up, and that's where the science shows that they're more likely to stick.
And that's just super cool because, like you were talking with functional training, right? Like if you're sitting on a machine and you're getting work done, but you're not integrating the whole system, so it's just another layer to it, right? So
absolutely.
Just as you're saying, you can exercise and you're going to release BDNF, you could add another layer to it and do the brain games that you guys bring into the component of it.
Yeah.
Just put that extra layer onto it.
And I think, when we talk to a lot of people, if we already work out, we might as well work on it in a way that's also working our brain.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. Whether you know someone with dementia, Alzheimer's, or you don't, I think we're all aging, right? We can't fight that. We're all going that way. If we can do something and control something about that, at least for me, I would
at least give ourselves a fighting chance.
I want to do something about it. And so that's kind of a mission of ours, is to empower those individuals to know that there is something that they can do about that aging process and cognitive decline.
I do want to bring up a question, though. You're talking about being on a treadmill. What about the people that read on the treadmill? Is that doing anything?
So we've talked about this a little bit. So I would challenge what type of one. I think if they're doing that, the treadmill is probably very
slow.
Well, and not speed, but yeah, it's probably slower, but it's not demanding a lot on their brain component.
Gotcha.
Whereas, so their focus isn't necessarily dual tasking, which is what we were doing upstairs. So dual tasking is when your brain and body is working at the same time, meaning you have to give your brain a piece of this working memory along with your body. So for instance, when we were doing that alphabet skip the letter, you were moving, laterally forward, back, running sometimes, or dribbling a ball. That's the physical component. But at the same time, your brain was working with probably as much, if not more, of the output needed. Which letters next? How many numbers is going to pop up in backwards alphabet? And then, I still need to dribble the ball. Where's the ball in space?
Yeah.
So there's a high demand for the brain component and the physical component. Whereas if someone's walking on a treadmill, the book's not moving necessarily. The treadmill is probably not moving all that fast. So the output needed on both the physical and cognitive piece probably isn't super challenging.
So, I mean, with all of the science showing how much this can, improve brain health and everything else, how come you don't see this happening anywhere? I mean, I've never had any sort of workout like this. Like, Josh, have you ever done any sort of exercise training like that?
Yeah.
Like, that's wild. Like, I mean, obviously you're an
Hence the
innovator
reason-
in the
right.
space, but
So hence the reason we're coming.
Yeah.
But why is that? I think it's interesting when you look at a lot of these looking at the technology piece of it, a lot of it's made for, or at least designed for, the youth or rehab facilities. So when we talk to a lot of the technologies, the smart fits, the extra games, a lot of the tools right now are geared towards kids and movement and being more active and more of the gamify is the term that they use, right? They want to make exercise fun, right? A lot of video games out there. So how do we make it more fun? So yes, 100% our workouts are going to be fun. They're going to be designed no matter what your age or physical activity is. It's going to be very fun and you'll want to stick around for sure. But that's where the science and research comes in. And I think the missing link is how to operationalize it and putting it in a way where it makes sense to the consumer or to the individuals. Because all of these are very flashy toys and they can be really exciting for a month or two. But if it's not showing change, if it's not designed with the exercise and the science piece exactly the right way, there's not going to be results. And if there's not results, no one's going to stick around.
Yeah.
So that's where, for 9 years in the making, it was making sure, one, does the science back us up? That's first off, right there. It has to be relevant and science has to back us up. And then two, how do you operationalize it in such a way that people want to keep coming back? And so it's linking it up together, making sure that if someone's going to be investing time, energy, and money into this, is it working? Because at the end of the day, I mean, as a fitness studio, if it's not working, someone's not going to keep investing. So we needed to make sure that we had the right research, the right tools, the right testing process, and screens to show, when you do these workouts in such a way, these many times a week, you're seeing improvements not only in your physical outcomes, but also your cognition. And that's something that we screen specifically.
So is there an optimal amount of time that you're going to exercise and an optimal amount of sessions per week?
Yeah. So what we found, we did a 6-month, trial at our previous studio. And then we also, we're doing a 12-week study at Miami University, which is really exciting. That's going to start in November. We're taking that and doing a research study with them. But what we found and what data is showing, 2 times a week, those 60-minute sessions, is when for at least 8 weeks, so twice a week for at least 8 weeks, the individuals in our trial program saw improvements both physically and with cognition. And when I say cognition, memory, visual spatial, which is your ability to see things in space and recall that, and then executive function, which is decision-making abilities. So when they came at least 2 times a week for at least 8 weeks consistently, they saw improvements across those.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
and that's for any age group then?
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
and I think a lot of people, when we were talking about this, they think, I either have to have some type of forgetfulness or dementia or know that. It's like, no, like it's for any single individual that wants to improve their brain health. Now, specifically, if you notice that, man, I'm forgetting my keys or certain important dates like birthdays or anniversaries, that might be the time to really get started. But it's never too early and it's never too late to start taking action towards it. And we want to empower those individuals, whether you're old, young, male, female, just starting out with fitness or been a fitness guru. Like, we're here for you in any way, or anyone to help you along and meet you where you're at on your journey.
Have you done the data on yourself?
So I've done, I do these workouts. Obviously, you follow me on social media.
Mm-hmm.
I do these workouts at home. I haven't necessarily rescreened in a while. I have. What we notice is the younger individuals, when we do the cognitive screenings, it's more of a baseline, more on the prevention side of it. So, let's say the score is 0 to 100 on some of these. We're in the 90s, 95s, 98s, and there's not much improvement that you could actually go from there because hundreds, let's say the top score, the max score, if we're always at 98, 99, 98, 99, it's hard to necessarily say that it's improving. But what's important to me or someone else, let's say you guys going through this, if you guys consistently scored high, because we're younger, we're fairly healthy, we probably move and eat fairly well, your scores on cognition, on the memory and visual, spatial, and executive function are probably going to be pretty high, just based on a rough outline of lifestyle. The important thing is there might not be improvement, meaning 98, 99, there's really not much room to grow. But as long as we're maintaining and we're preventing it from getting worse, that's one of our missions too, is you don't necessarily, we can't diagnose or say that someone has Alzheimer's or dementia based on any type of our screening tools. But what we can show is there improvement, or are you staying where you need to be?
Yeah, it's like trying to take an 18-year-old, develop strength. You're going to develop a whole lot more muscle than a 50-year-old that comes in just
Correct.
because of time. You know,
Yep.
It's you're kind of trying to be reactive instead of proactive with
Yeah.
it. So.
And so, Amanda, to answer your question, I do the workouts, I do the screenings, I believe in everything that we do. And I've noticed a difference just in, one, I think the workouts are more enjoyable because there's a whole fun aspect to it. But two, like I want to be sharp, seeing both my grandparents go through Alzheimer's and, forgetting our names and where we were at and where we were, very painful. And to see my parents go through that, like if there's anything that I can do and that I can have control in, I want to do that. And so when I do the screenings, I make sure that I'm staying at my baseline, right? My score is my score, and it might not see improvement because it's at the higher range because I'm younger and I eat well and I work out, but I don't want to see it go down. That's what I'm working towards, is to make sure it stays, in that higher range.
Well, and it's kind of a different topic. And I know we discussed this last time that you were on the podcast, even though that was like 4 years ago.
Long time. 700 episodes.
Yeah. That, just even thinking of, because when we associate dementia and Alzheimer's, we associate it with an older population. And I know that you've worked with in your previous job of training and exercise with older population, and just all of the science that shows how much that just improves your quality of life outside of the brain, but just physically, and I'm sure the brain attached in that too, of how incredibly important that is to just have movement in your everyday routine as you get older.
Yeah, and I mean, the number one thing, if there's anything someone takes away from this podcast, is that exercise is the number one thing, or physical activity is the number one thing that you can do for brain health. Research shows it. There's a lot of studies that are out there. Movement, get moving. So if you're new to exercise or not very active right now, go take a walk. Start by just going out and taking a walk, trying a new trail, going out in Cincinnati and exploring, or wherever you're at, and just trying a different trail. That alone is the first step that you can take. And then as you feel more comfortable, as you get more active, then you elevate that to that next level, whether it be a studio, a gym, a fitness facility, a health center, more cognitive piece of something like Activate. The idea is there's always things that you can do, but physical activity is the number one thing across the board.
Sorry to interrupt this conversation real quick, but I want to jump in and tell you about my current health coach, Sarah from Team Fit With Me. She's been my health coach since October of 2020. She's been on this podcast multiple times, and I met Sarah through this podcast when I first started in 2018. Sarah is an amazing health coach, and if you're looking for somebody to help you with nutrition, with exercise, with mindset, Sarah and her whole team has got you, including if you have some gut health conditions, thyroid diseases, PCOS, and hormonal dysfunction. There's a meal plan option, which I will tell you I am doing this week. Coach Jess put together my whole meal plan and gave me all the recipes, and I'm trying all new foods this week. Absolutely amazing. Lots of options. And right now you can get 10% off month one of all packages, plans, and services when you go to teamfitwithme.com/poundthis. So if you're interested in a great health coach, or you just have some questions, reach out to Sarah and she'll get those answered for you. Again, teamfitwithme.com/poundthis, and the link is in the show notes. Now let's get back to Adam and Josh. Well, I think that's just an important point to bring up with that too, is that exercise, or I think that gyms kind of get attached with just aesthetics of like, well, I'm trying to get skinny, and I'm trying to look hot, and I'm trying to get ripped, and all of that of like, no, this is how much it is improving your brain and functionality and how you just move on the earth and how you age better, of just, yeah, that's what exercise and all of this can be. It doesn't have to just be this like get your ass beat into the ground so you look hot sort of thing, which it feels like. I mean, I can get both of your opinions on this. I guess as far as like marketing or the temperature of society goes, it feels like we're moving a little bit more into that aspect of exercise is, you're not doing it as a punishment. You're doing it to do something good for your body versus this like, hey, let's get shredded. I mean, I know that's still a lot of in the conversation, but it feels like we're moving more towards this like, no, let's take care of our brain. Let's take care of our bodies. Just go out for a walk. Let's do some breathing. Let's do some yoga. Let's take care of ourselves versus the other side of it.
Yeah. Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it kind of works both ways. Like you have people that come in that are just looking for the aesthetics part of it, and then they realize, wow, all these other areas in my life have kind of cleared up or whatever the case may be just from adding in exercise, or vice versa. They just start with exercise because they're feeling run down or they're feeling tired or whatever the case may be. And then the aesthetics part of it is kind of a byproduct of it. So I think it's cool to see the marketing shift around it, right? It used to be if you weren't shredded, you weren't getting on the cover of a magazine, you know, but now because of the internet, I mean, social media has made it just a game changer that average people are just showing their journey and showing how, you know, it just improves or changes different areas in their life. And I think that more people are understanding that component of it.
Yeah. And I think to add to that, if you think about the word, I mean, doing it for 10 years in the realm of Anytime Fitness, right? The word gym has a certain feeling to it, right? When you say gym, there's a certain place, thought, smell, environment that you think of. When you say fitness center, there's a certain, you know, connotation behind that. When you say health and wellness center, you know, there's a certain feeling. So I think it's understanding, you know, what is your audience? What do you want to be a part of? And then go after it. There's nothing wrong with that as a fitness facility or whatever you're doing. Specifically at Activate Brain and Body, we were specifically trying not to be a gym. We're not in competition with another gym or another studio because we want to be so different. Where we're more of a brain studio is what I would call it, or a health and wellness center. Because it's not going to be a typical membership-based facility. It's going to be very high-end service, high-end product, a different atmosphere when you go in there. So I think as far as how marketing goes, it's wording, it's feeling, it's making sure that you're speaking to your target audience. Specifically for us, you know, it's going to be someone who might have tried a gym before that maybe didn't like it, right? There was a bad experience. They felt uncomfortable. They didn't feel like they were a part of a community or family. So we want to welcome them in and make sure they feel part of a community or a family, and know that whether they're new to exercise or, you know, been doing it for a while, that we'll meet them on their, you know, aspect where they're at and challenge them and push them and show them improvements, you know, whether that's just going from showing up to the facility or maybe this is a whole new realm, you know, specifically based on brain health.
Well, the thing is that the feeling, I would imagine, just even the little bit that I got to do today, of normally whenever you leave any sort of physical activity and exercise, whether you're, you know, going for a walk or running a 5K or you're doing a CrossFit class, you have those endorphins going and you're just kind of like, usually, you know, the desired feeling is like, oh yeah, I feel really good. I feel like a badass. And I imagine there's a whole new element to that of not only are you being physically active and doing all of that, but like you're also working your brain in the process. That I imagine the after feeling of one of these workouts is just kind of like, yeah, like, man, I really maximized my time here.
Yeah, it's like you're just like ready to go. Like I could see, you know, lunchtime, you have a business that you're kind of getting into that lull of the day. You go and do this exercise and all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's like a fresh day and your productivity goes through the roof. And
yeah, I think there's an important social component to what we're doing. So obviously physical activity is great for brain health, the whole cognitive piece, right? You're always stimulating the brain with something new, but social engagement, that's another really important part of brain health. It's, you know, we're human beings. We're meant to be in tribes, be with other people and form relationships. So every workout that we do, our whole facility is going to be based around that social component. So when you're going through a workout and you're sweating together, you're moving together, you're encouraging each other, you're not ever working out against someone. You're always in like a little fitness family there. And it's so cool. Like one of my best experiences or favorite experiences, going into work out with someone who might be new to exercise. And I've done it for a little bit now on my own journey, which is great, come a long way. But when I can be like, man, I remember my first time working out and how I felt. And you can encourage them, and then they start encouraging somebody else, and then that encouragement, you know, spreads to everybody within that session, and we're sweating together, and we're struggling and pushing through it together. And then by the end of that session, now not only are you physically tired with your muscles, but your brain's also tired. It's like, whew, you feel like you accomplished a lot. And then because you all did it together, there's a sense of community.
Yeah.
It's like, man, we did this together. So there's a really cool feeling after, obviously, a workout session, but now there's that brain component, and we all went through this together, and we pushed through it. That's when it's really cool.
Have you done any of the science behind, I'm not just like productivity. I don't want to be like, hey, you're more of like a work machine now. But like after doing this and you're seeing that brain improvement and you have the data to show that, and is there a way to tie that into, well, have you more creative ideas? Are you better at your job now? Can you do more functional things with that? Like, because I'm sure if there was a component to that, like plenty of workplaces would be like, oh, please come visit us.
Yeah, I would say research right now, is it out there? For sure, 100%. Somewhere, one of our core values is, science and research.
Yeah.
I don't feel confident talking specifically about that.
Okay.
But I will say this, and just like you said this earlier, Josh, when you start moving more and you start moving properly and you get your body more healthy and your brain is getting healthier, everything else seems to fall in line. Productivity. I know there's research out there. This is just based on the physical activity portion. They did a study with CEOs, and what they looked at is when the CEOs prioritize their time, meaning they schedule at least 1 hour for them, meaning a workout, right? They schedule meetings all day long, and they schedule all these other conference calls, but most don't schedule 1 hour for themselves for a workout. But the CEOs that generally scheduled at least an hour, I don't know exactly, could be 2 or 3 times a week, but when they scheduled that and they had their workout in, their success, meaning financially or their business, was higher.
Interesting.
So I know that that's a study that's out there.
That's super cool. So out of all of this research and everything that you've been doing to obviously get this place off the ground and everything for your own personal needs, what would you say is the most interesting thing that you learned in the process?
Most interesting thing. I don't know if this has to do exactly with research, but personally, I think it's the feeling of going back to when my grandparents had it. I lived with my grandpa as he was going through it. And, he would call me different names every day. He thought we were living on a farm. We were in a house in a suburb. Some days he was irritable. Some days my mom was frustrated. You feeling like I had no control over it and I couldn't do anything to help. And I think my mom felt that same way. Knowing that now there's things that we can do and I can help guide somebody in that direction and hopefully inspire someone to do something and take action. I think that's the most interesting thing that I learned, is that there is hope. There is something we can do. It's never too early. It's never too late. So I'm younger. I'm going to do something about it now. And if you know somebody or personally you're starting to forget your keys or important dates, take action. There is something you can do versus I felt like, at least with my grandpa, it's coming. It's happening. I hope this is peaceful for him. Was kind of the feeling that we got, because there wasn't anything that we could do. So I think that's the most interesting thing that I've learned through this research is there is something we can do, and it's backed by research and science. So now it's just inspiring and helping others take action.
Well, that's going to be great because there's probably so many people listening to this right now that are affected by Alzheimer's or dementia in some sort of way, thinking that it's hopeless and there's nothing you can do. To hear that there's something that you can do, it's got to feel pretty amazing. And I know you were just at the Alzheimer's walk here at Cincinnati, and I'm sure you had some of those conversations while you were there. I've been to several of those Alzheimer's walks, and they're amazing. Like they're just like they're so fun and colorful and happy, and to be there is like, hey, I've done some research and I'm opening this new facility that can actually have some like preventative measures and can help these people that you're here for. Has to be a pretty incredible feeling.
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, we were at the Westchester one 2-3 weeks ago, and at Sawyer Point, just over the weekend. And we led the warm up, which is pretty cool. Doing a warm up with 2,000 to 3,000 people. That's a whole different ballgame. But it was really fun and to really for the first time talk to individuals face to face, because we're opening up at the end of the year. To have those types of conversations and see from somebody else. So obviously when we're in this bubble of the initial founders, we're having these conversations and it all sounds good. But when you go out and you actually get to talk to people and you see their reactions and their types of conversations, it just solidifies, okay, what we're doing can make a difference. And it is on the top of people's minds. So we're very excited about, where this is going to go.
And I just have to add a note of you being one of the earlier on guests on my podcast, and Josh has been on a million episodes of my podcast. I think that from me doing this and talking to everybody I've talked to, I think the continuing thread that I see with everybody is that works in this space just deeply cares and wants to help and wants to just do whatever we can to make someone else's quality of life a little bit better. And I think that that's amazing that, again, when you hear gym or fitness facility, you kind of don't see the heart behind it. You just see it's a building, and to know the people that are like, hey, we're creating this. I have this family tie to this. This is something is deeply important to me, and I'm finding purpose in my life for helping other people have a better quality of life. I think is been really amazing for me to have this podcast to see that. But I'm hoping for everyone listening that they're hearing you and everything that you're doing, because I mean, having this incredible amount of research behind opening this place that's not an easy job.
No, I mean, and it's not just another fitness studio that we're opening up. That wasn't our goal. It's. I mean, that's why we're partnering with Miami University on the first research, and we know that there's going to be a lot more. But everything that we have to do has to be backed by research. And I think the question came up earlier: why so long? Why is it? Why isn't anybody else necessarily doing it? It's because they need to make sense of the research that's out there, and then also operationalize it. So taking all this research, all this science, and somehow putting it in this space that makes sense to a community and a consumer.
Do you have any more questions, Josh?
No, I mean, just to kind of piggyback off of what you were saying, I mean, you guys' messaging is awesome. And I think that, just being a part of and hearing your guys' story and your journey. And I mean, it's awesome to feel the fitness community changing in that way.
That's also exciting too.
Yeah.
It's really cool to see it change with that.
So, I mean, I'm excited to see where you guys go.
Cool.
So tell me more about where your location's going to be. You're not opening until the end of the year, but if somebody's listening to this now and they're like, okay, now this is a spot that I want to go.
What do I got to do?
Yeah.
Yep. So we're opening end of the year. Mid to end December is our timeline as of right now in Montgomery, in the old Eddie Lane Diamond Building. So it's a couple blocks from Montgomery Inn. So that's normally a good landmark that people know, the Montgomery Inn restaurant. We're a couple blocks away from that, across from that big new construction that's happening over there. Best way to get in touch. So we're going to start doing a pre-sale in November. So if you guys are really interested, hey, this struck a chord, whether with myself or someone I know.
Christmas gift for mom and dad.
Christmas gift, right? The best thing that you can do is both on our website, so www.activatebrainandbody.com, sign up for our newsletter. We put out a lot of great content just on the stuff that we talked about today on brain health, and follow us on Facebook. So we'll always be doing information and what's going on there. Just Activate Brain and Body Cincinnati.
And I know this is something that you haven't even opened yet, but because there are so many Pound This listeners that don't live in Cincinnati, do you plan on having any sort of virtual component?
Yeah, so obviously step number one, physical location in Cincinnati. Make sure all the science and everything is put together and is running very well. But over time, there will be some type of at-home virtual components. Those pods are great. There might be an at-home bundle that we can do. So yes, at some point, there'll be a virtual expansion. But at first, it's going to be the physical location. But subscribe to our newsletter so you can still at least get information on things that you can do with exercise, activities, etc.
Awesome. Well,
one more.
Yeah.
How does one become a brain coach?
A brain coach.
Certified brain health trainer, Josh.
That's what it is. So certified brain health trainer. It's a certification through ACE right now. So a certification, you can log in, you take it. It's really in depth. It's very sciencey, as you can imagine. But all the education is there. So all of our trainers are going to be certified brain health trainers. That links the physical piece in programming into how does that specifically work different parts of the brain? How do you apply it? So, you could probably search a certified brain health trainer, and there's a course that you would go through, almost like a mini college. It's like a mini college course. It's not just one of those ones, doing so many of them, you get this expectation like, oh, all right, this is just another course. Right. It's like a college course.
Okay, so this is how would you put it into the level of getting your certified personal trainer versus getting continuing education?
I would say take that, whether it's NASM, ACP or ACSM, take that and then add a whole nother science college course that you might have taken.
Gotcha.
And put it together.
So going deep into the weeds.
Going deep into the weeds.
So how long did it take you to get that certification?
Oh, man.
2 hours.
Yeah. 1.5 because I'm a brain trainer. No, it took, 3 or 4 months. Now, most people, I would say it takes a little bit longer. But at that time, I was fully devoted, a couple hours a day. on a regular schedule. I treat it like a normal college course where
Okay.
1 to 2 hours a day, I was reading, I was studying, learning the material, obviously applying it too. It's one thing to just get all these certifications, but if you can't apply it, so knowing that this was the next chapter with Activate Brain and Body, I wanted to make sure I could apply it. So it was cool to have the course going on at once, then having access to the SmartFit technology and these workouts so I could learn it and then go apply it to help me understand it and learn a little bit more.
And that's probably why you learn faster.
I would say so.
Yeah.
The dual tasking.
That sounds intense. And that's through ACE?
I believe it's ACE right now. Yep. And I think there's different sub portals that you can go through. So if you Google certified brain health trainer, it'll pop up. But I think ACE is the main vendor right now.
Cool.
You going to go get that now, Josh?
I don't know about that.
We'll leave that to Adam. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, it's Activate Brain and Body, and I'm going to put all the links in the show notes. Cool. Adam Ortman, thank you so much for coming back.
Thanks, Amanda. Thanks, Josh.
Thanks.
AmandaValentineBites.com